Hey everyone, today we're going to be doing a simulated texture study of a photograph of a falcon. We'll be doing it in Affinity Photo, which is a digital editing software. We start off by outlining the shape, and then when we do that, we must make sure that the line shows a quality of the texture of the shape, so we should be able to see feathers, a feather-like texture. Then we use mark making. The different areas will use different marks, but for example, in the feathers, I use lines to create the feathers, and in the sort of the chest area of the falcon, I use lots of like linear scribbles so that we can get that more downy, softer feather quality with the stripes that are going across the chest of the falcon. And then lastly, I go over the values just to create the illusion of form, so that there's areas with light and shade. Make sure that you watch right until the end so that you can see examples of the different steps, and you can see a summary of the presentation. Go to my thumbnail, right click on it, and then select to open with Affinity Photo. Then I adjust the levels. I must make my white, I need to be able to see into my shadows, and then I make my shadows a little bit lighter, and I make my highlights and my light midtones pure white. It's just going to save in the drawing time and also make the artwork way more visually interesting. So the next thing I need to do is just save this to my desktop, so that I've got a record of it in case something goes wrong. It's always good to save your work as you go. So change the name to Bob's Falcon just for fun, and save it to my desktop. I repeat the opening process, right click on it and open it in Affinity. And now this is my background layer. I need to make sure that this is the right file size, so I'm checking the centimeters, and it's really good that I checked because this is a very small image, and I need to make a much larger image. Because those ratios, or the ratio is locked, I just need to change one side of the height or the width. Here I'm adding layers. I'm showing you the background layer, then there's the levels layer, and then this one I'm going to make a white background. I select the brush tool, and then I go up and I select the white. You'll see that there's a white circle over a black circle. That means that the white color, or the white tone, the white highlight is going to be what I'm going to be drawing. And I work with a nice big brush. I select a big brush by pressing my right square bracket that can be found next to the P on the keyboard. Now I need to make a drawing layer, so I select the black brush and I start drawing, but you'll see that the brush size that I've got is way too large, so I need to make it smaller by pressing the left square bracket key that you find right next to the P on your keyboard. And then I start tracing the outline of the bird, making sure that the quality of line is one that suggests the texture of feathers. I'm going to do that for a while, and there I've got the outline, the contour line. You'll see in some areas there's the texture does look like feathers. And now start outlining the secondary contour lines, the outlines of the secondary shapes. While I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about what the edge quality is like, so I can show that it's feathery. I'm also thinking about the value. Some of these lines I'm going to go over several times so that they're quite thick, and where they're thick they're going to have a heavier weight, so it will suggest shadows and darker values. Here I'm working into the feathers. I'm using lines to show the feather-like texture. In the darker areas I outline the bottom part of the feather because that's where the shadows would be. And just making sure that the lines that I'm drawing are the lines that would be following the form of the feather and the wing. When I click the arrow, the check mark next to the layer, it means that I can see it. If it's unchecked, I won't be able to see it. So that's really important. You also can adjust the opacity by going to the top of that section above the layers, and you can change it so that you may find it easier to draw with a 30% white opacity, so that it simplifies the drawing process for you. As I get closer to the left hand side, my values are getting lighter, so I'm trying to use less lines, because if I use lots of lines the tones will be quite dark, or the values will be quite dark. Here I'm showing the shapes. I'm not outlining the shapes, I'm just using mark making to show the texture of feathers on the back. It's lighter than the bottom part of the wing, so I'm trying to use less marks. Just using a scribbling linear technique to show the feathery, fluffy, linear type stripes of the falcon. And then I start adding a value layer. It's a good idea to do the value layer, to do your values on a separate layer. So I work in the textures for the stripy areas, but then on the neck and the belly of the falcon, there's a texture which is the linear stripes, the dark black bands of pattern on the feathers of the falcon. But then there's also the shadows underneath the belly and in this part of the neck, and it's important that I show that so that it creates the illusion of form of the falcon. So the pattern's already there, the textures are already there, and so that this feels like it's a three-dimensional depiction of the falcon, I need to add value to it, and that's what I'm doing here. Adding some value and some texture to that leg, doing the same in the wing, adding the value in now. And that's it. There are areas where I could go back and just put in a few more details or erase some of the details so that I can see clearly, but I'm pretty happy with that, and I hope this is helpful to you. So just to recap, to create simulated texture in a digital drawing, you start off with a contour line where the quality of the contour line shows the texture of the edge of the shape. So in this case, it'll be a texture of feathers. Then you need to add marks into your shapes to create textures. You'll see that I used lines or a linear mark in the feathers on the wing, and then scribbles in the feathers, the more downy, softer feathers on the belly of the falcon. On the shoulder of the falcon is an area with midtones and some light midtones. So I want to show the textures, but I must be very careful not to use many marks, because that will make it quite dark. So I'm quite sparing with the kind of marks or the amount of marks that I make, but I use a kind of mark that will show a small feather texture. Then when I'm working into the darker midtones, I can use a lot more mark. I can use a lot more lines, and then where I'm working contour lines under the bottom of each feather shape, I make the contour lines of those feather shapes quite thick, and that suggests that there's more volume and there's a lot more shadow in that area. The last thing that I do here is I create a new layer, and then I just work in the values over the texture marks, so that I can create a sense of shadow that is falling over the textured areas in the darker areas of the belly of the falcon. I hope you guys found this helpful, and that you enjoy doing this drawing. Cheers.